So last month was absolutely insane for Workshop. We got Goku, 5 new Smash characters, unregistered Hypercam 2, Deora, Fernet, Mao, and so much more. However, one thing stood out as a massive trend that keeps on giving, with new stuff coming out daily for it for what feels like weeks. Of course, I'm talking about Rivals of Aether SSL. SSL has blown up in popularity recently, becoming more popular than even the regular Workshop releases. And that's left a lot of people out of the loop wondering, what even is SSL, and why are there so many of them? Well, I have the answers, so I'd like to tell you about it. Also, stick around to the end for a couple of exciting new reveals for the SSL game mode. First off, let's start with the history lesson. What is SSL? Well, on the record, SSL doesn't stand for anything to avoid the eye of a certain company. Off the record, though, SSL stands for Super Smash Land. If that name rings a bell, it was a game made in 2011 by one Dan Fernacey, someone who would later go on to make Rivals of Aether. It was an extremely popular fan game at the time, featuring a very interesting take on the Smash formula. You see, the point of Super Smash Land was to comfortably emulate the way Smash would look and feel on a Game Boy. While this doesn't necessarily take into account hardware limitations, it does take into account the control scheme. As such, the game only uses 2 buttons, jump and attack. While you'd think this would be boring, think again. The idea was to capture as much of a character's kit as possible within the limited moveset. Link still has his crazy bomb setups, Pikachu has his Skull Bash and Thunder shenanigans, and Vaporeon has their bubbles and teleports. Wait. That's right, the game also included 2 newcomers, both of which appeared in future platform fighters. Mega Man is an aggressive and powerful zoner who later appeared in Smash 4, and Vaporeon? Well, a lot of those same concepts were reused for a certain slippery scumbag in Rivals of Aether, or Kane. Despite the simple gameplay and concept, the game became a cult classic. References to it exist all through the Brawl modding scene, with SSL Lavender Town being part of the Brawl Minus stage list. I'd love to talk more about the original Super Smash Land more if people are interested, but that's a talk for another day. Today, I'm here to talk about Super Smash Land and Rivals. This started as a quick side project in one of the modding groups I'm in, Team Grappler Project. The idea was to attempt to replicate the gameplay of Super Smash Land and Rivals. It started with just Chad and Anglara, and then I threw Sandbert into the mix. From there, it just kept growing and growing with more characters like Marth, Guile, Cloud, Iroh, Carcassonne, until we ended up with a roster of over 50 characters. The SSL cast has some major differences over the main Rivals cast. For starters, they only have 2 buttons, jump and attack. This means all of the strong and special buttons work the same as the attack button, and parrying and air dodging doesn't work at all. This leaves the number of unique attacks at 9. 8 if you follow the initial SSL rule that jab and nair are the same. The characters also have the same run speed, so they can be played with a D-pad, just like on the Game Boy. However, there are a few changes from Super Smash Land, or rather, some things not removed from Rivals. Because all of your other defense options are gone, projectiles become a major threat. While you do have to tank them, you can still minimize their effect with a crouch cancel, preventing knockback. And of course, Rivals' signature mechanic hit falling is just too fun, so that gets to stay as well. While this technically doesn't work on a D-pad, you can always set it to run, so this should work fine. But why did SSL blow up so much? Well, there's a few reasons I believe this is the case. First and foremost, it's a fun trend. Reimagining characters in the classic style of the Game Boy is really cool, and it's a fun way to revise characters. The second reason is that SSL characters are just way easier to make. Where the average Rivals character takes around 20 to 60 hours of work, an SSL character takes around 5 to 15. That's basically an afternoon. This is due to the fact that characters have less art and coding. However, while this creates restrictions, that segues into my third point. SSL is its own metagame, and there are very different limitations. You don't have tilts, strongs, and specials to worry about, you just have attacks, and those can be whatever you wish. The room for creative character concepts is there, and devs take full advantage of it. There's tournaments and whatnot, but it's a completely new, more chill meta. This creates a really fun environment for players and devs alike, so it's no surprise it's been attracting a lot of new attention. Like I said, there's over 50 characters, so there's probably way too much for me to cover them all. I'd love to talk about more of them if the interest is there, but today I'd like to highlight some of the unique things about SSL and how characters creatively are built and play around them. Obviously, with a lot of characters and devs coming from base rivals, keeping the spirit of mechanically complex and gimmicky characters is a priority. However, with less than half the attacks, mechanics do have to be adjusted to cut corners. One of the first examples, and a pretty great example of how to simply tone down a gimmick, is Regina's Carcassonne. In base rivals, Carcassonne has a meter that slowly fills up. You get stronger as it fills, but if it fills completely, you instantly die. While the tools are technically there to make that work, the lack of buttons may make that endgame punishment a lot to worry about for the reward. In exchange, Carcassonne's blades now apply a buff to Carcassonne when caught. This increases their speed and adds lifesteal to their attacks, allowing them to heal. This buff can be applied at any time, but comes with a trade-off that they take massive damage while it's active, and lose access to their projectile, leaving them forced to approach. This causes them to hard commit to rushing in to mitigate the damage taken with their healing. While this is still ultimately fairly standard, it's a pretty unique gimmick that's cool to see. Now, if you're looking for something crazier, there's always one person you can look for crazy gimmicks. Sai delivers yet again with their character Yukio. At first glance, Yukio seems like a standard all-rounder swordie. However, like characters like Zetta or Mayu, they have a sword meter. Filling this meter causes Nair to become a massive attack with huge range. While this alone would be a neat gimmick, after using this move, Yukio sheathes their sword, charging a huge attack. They become much slower in this state, but all of their attacks become huge finishers. After using one of them, Yukio resets to their base form. This provides a unique rhythm to playing Yukio that other characters don't have. Although, if you're looking for the balance of a subtle yet intricate gimmick, look no further than Gengar. Gengar, developed by Blanner, Ryoku, and Delta Parallax, is a glass cannon character with solid normals and incredible zoning. However, to compensate, Gengar's movement is incredibly floaty. Gengar's passive, Levitate, allows them to fast fall at any point in their jump. While this sounds broken, this comes at the cost of even their fast fall speed not being that good. Because of this, your recovery becomes an invaluable movement tool, a long, invisible movement option in Teleport. As an offensive tool, this is very hard to aim, but that's where the gimmick comes in. Landing Gengar's Shadow Ball will inflict the cursed status effect on the opponent. The more charge on the Shadow Ball, the longer it lasts. While it's on, Teleport becomes Hex, a multi-hit attack that locks onto the opponent. This is a powerful combo extender that the opponent has little counterplay against once it's set up, and pretty much guarantees a dangerous combo. This allows Gengar to turn the tides of battle and go from being juggled to getting a juggle themselves. And speaking of non-standard movement like Teleport and Levitate, movement gimmicks are a big deal in SSL. Because you don't have air dodge, or even run for that matter, a character having a unique movement tool is much more impactful. A simple way to do this is to provide a different way to access a tool that would be lost. One such case of this is Equinox's take on Ruby Heart. At first glance, she seems like one of the more standard characters, and you'd be right. A good chunk of her kit is based on her normals from MVC2, which certainly isn't a bad thing as she's a ton of fun. However, she's quickly become one of my favorites due to her forward air, Schwarzale. This multi-hit water dash is powerful and fun on its own, but it can also be angled up or down, and if you angle it down, the move stops as soon as you hit the ground, but doesn't take your momentum. This makes Ruby one of the only SSL fighters with the ability to wave dash, allowing for some crazy movement. Combined with the far reach of her tilts, this allows for some insane movement. Another way that SSL characters add cool movement is just to dedicate a button specifically to it. Such is the case for Sai's Zero. Zero's moveset is actually quite faithful to Mega Man Zero, and this applies to movement. Your forward tilt is the Mega Man Zero dash. This can be cancelled into a powerful dash attack, covering a lot of ground and dealing good damage. However, Like in the source game, it can be jump cancelled. This makes Zero's air drift go from terrible to amazing, and lets him get in incredibly well. Another interesting thing that I noticed is that Zero's recovery is actually his wall jump instead of his up air like most characters. He has the Mega Man X/Zero wall jumping, allowing him to scale walls by jumping into them over and over. Because of this, his recovery is pretty linear, and while he's technically free to attack out of this may make it difficult to recover. Although, a character with good movement doesn't always mean a character with fast movement. Take
sheer grub
Yukari Yakumo, for example, a slow trickster with some of the hardest hitting moves in the game. Her down tilt creates a gap on both sides of her. She can then push forward or backward to choose which gap to appear from. This allows her to keep her distance or get in. Down air and up air are similar moves, pushing her a set distance downward or upwards. Up air causes pratfall, but down air does not. Furthermore, down air can be used close to the ground to bounce up, leading to even more movement. Lastly, Yukari can double jump cancel the teleport, allowing her to instantly use certain tools for maximum damage. While not true, gap, double jump cancel nair into F-tilt hits like a freight train if it lands. Literally. Now, if there's one thing I'd like to see explored more is making new projectiles for the metagame. You see, zoners are already kind of a pain in the context of rivals because there's no shields. A charge shot would be way more lethal than you'd expect. Now with SSL, not only do you not have shields, but you also have to keep in mind that characters don't even have parrying, and also have much more limited movement. Obviously zoners can still be fun, but making zoners that are fun to play against is quite tricky. It doesn't help that because of how simple it is, a lot of characters have a projectile tacked on just because, or to give them a good advantage against another zoner. No offense to anyone who's done that, it's perfectly fine. I just love seeing more experimentation with the characters. However, a few interesting ideas have been tried, and I'd like to talk about them. While this isn't too out there, an honorable mention to Rega and Regina's Visel's projectile. It fires in an arc, but if it lands without hitting anything, it becomes a potion. Pushing a neutral attack will set the bomb off instantly, doing massive damage in an area. This creates a really interesting trap that the opponent has to respect. One of the more traditional zoners SSL has is We Play Tank by Dino Bros. The main feature of this tank is the machine gun. This can be fired up to 5 times in a row, and while it only does 1 damage, holds the opponent in place for a bit. It's more of a nuisance than anything, but it racks up damage fast. However, it needs to recharge after use. Furthermore, it's also tied to Tank's up special and does not recharge while airborne, so if you get punished for shooting, good luck with that. The last thing Tank can do is set a mine that does great damage and can be detonated with any hitbox, such as an opponent's hitting it or a stray bullet. This makes Wii Tank's pressure very good, but makes disadvantage all the more dangerous. However, one of the most fun zoners I've played recently has to be Fungi by Fungi Wizard. Fungi's primary projectile is basically Explosive Flame, a very powerful projectile that multi-hits and can even kill, but has very precise range. The other projectiles are follow-ups to down air and back air, but if you want to use those, you have to generate mana flames with down tilt. This takes a bit, so it's good to do this when knocking the opponent too far away to follow up. It's absolutely worth getting mana flames though, as the projectiles are incredibly strong, and also have the multi-hit effect for great damage and combo potential. Mana flames can also boost recovery though, so keep that in mind. This creates a really fun resource management zoner that has some fantastic stuff at the cost of having to work for it. Although, with projectiles being a big part of the meta, and immensely powerful, characters do have creative ways of playing defense to compensate. Now, some of these are tried and true methods, of course. Ruber Cuber's Pit has the Guardian Orbitars. These provide armor and reflect projectiles back at the sender. While this isn't super crazy, Pit doesn't rely on this tool. He still has the bow to do zoning of his own alongside a fantastic combo game. This includes F-tilt, which also reflects projectiles. Yet again, Sai has a very interesting take on the zoner problem. Elri is a grappler/counter zoner character. Their main mechanic is the swords. They get these swords from either using down tilt to generate them, or grabbing an opponent with forward air. While these swords take a bit to acquire, they can be thrown very quickly as projectiles, or all 5 can be used at once to add extra kill power to their tilts. Now, I know what you're thinking, how does this counter zoning? Well, you see, Elri's down tilt and forward air also have an additional way to get swords, as they absorb projectiles. While it's pretty safe to do this with down tilt, be extra careful with forward tilt, as grabbing a projectile resets the move, causing it to go back to startup and extending its distance. While this can surprise the opponent, it also allows them extra time to react and punish you for going for the grab. This creates a very interesting risk-reward where the opponent is rewarded by keeping Elri out, but Elri gets a chance to force them to change their tactics when they have the swords at the ready. Although, when talking about zoning and counter zoning, you have to talk about the founder of the turtle playstyle, Guile. Dino Bros SSL Guile has been a staple of SSL from day one, and there's no surprise why. But he did receive an interesting rework recently. His sonic boom doesn't travel as far, preventing him from just mashing it. In exchange, by holding down, Guile can build charge. This allows you to throw fast sonic booms that cover most of the stage, but more importantly, give you access to the most iconic reversal possibly ever, Flash Kick. While at first this doesn't seem like a defensive tool, as it's mainly an anti-air punish and Guile's best kill move, the move has invincibility on startup. In a game without any sort of blocking, this means that your opponent has to try to get near you to drop. In a game without blocking, this means your opponent has to try to get you to drop the charge or face a near uncontestable kick to the face. There's a reason this playstyle is so iconic, and it's a ton of fun in the world of SSL. And that's just a sampling of what you can find in SSL. Other than this, there's still a slew of other cool stuff. For example, some characters like SSL Anglara and Iroh are based on unreleased versions of them, and have moves the base versions do not. There's even boss fights like Gallium and Boss Elri that test your skills with a limited moveset. And if none of that's your cup of tea, just like regular Workshop, we have silly stuff like jelly-filled donut to fill the void. And that's not even going into stages. Due to the different proportions SSL characters have, they don't work well with normal stages, but we have over 30 to choose from. Iconic Workshop stages like Chad's Gym and Den of Tribute, Smashland stages like Lavender Town and the Underground, and even some new ones like Loxodon Arena and We Play Tanks. Plus, while the numbers are way more limited, some stages support SSL Deluxe mode, changing the Aether versions of the stages to look more like Game Boy Color. I really like the look of this, it feels really nostalgic to me. And yeah, that's what I have to say about SSL. I hope this provided a new glance at this interesting new game mode, and at the very least helped you to understand what it is, maybe even got you interested. If you'd like to play SSL or make your own characters, it has its own separate Discord that I'll link in the description. Let me know if you'd like to see more SSL content. Although, before we go, I'd like to leave you with a couple more exciting reveals of some new SSL content.